but I had a good childhood. So why is this affecting my marriage? Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com, the podcast where I help men start leading their lives and marriages with grounded strength and confidence. A comment that's made over and over in my coaching sessions by many of the men that I work with says something along the lines of, I had a good childhood. I mean, my parents loved me. There was no abuse. There was no major trauma. So why do I still struggle with emotional connection? If you say this is part of the inner child and inner boy, why then do I feel anxious or shut down in my marriage? Why do I keep reacting in ways that I don't like, but I had an okay upbringing? And I understand this. You see, what's happened is your good childhood included emotional gaps that maybe you didn't have words for at the time. You may not have really understood this, but they became coping strategies. And those coping strategies have become your default survival mode in your marriage. Because my parents loving me isn't necessarily the same as my emotional needs were met. And oftentimes this results from generational emotional wounding that just gets passed down. And so you developed those specific coping strategies. So when we look at this idea of a good childhood, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a man who works hard, loves his family, loves his parents, loves his children, loves his wife, cares deeply. You're not looking to blame anyone. You're not looking to blame your parents. You have this sense of honor in how you were raised. And when some guy with a podcast says you're acting from your childhood wounds, this feels a little weird because you're thinking, come on, my parents. I loved my parents. They were great. I wasn't neglected. I wasn't abused. My dad worked hard. My mom was there. What else was I supposed to expect? See, you can grow up in a good home and still grow up without the emotional modeling that you needed. And when we stop and really think about our parents and look at them through this different lens, they didn't know how to speak their needs. Often they didn't know how to regulate their emotions. And they're doing the best they can, not knowing how to connect emotionally with each other, and maybe with you. Often they modeled conflict-avoidant, people-pleasing behaviors on their own. Anger, shutdown, codependency. Yeah, your parents weren't bad people, but they're human and they were wounded. And they probably learned those patterns from their parents. And unless you've done the work to break that chain, you're carrying those unspoken patterns into your marriage now. So let's start with noticing. Let's notice what was missing. We're not blaming, we're not shaming, we're not minimizing, but let's notice. Ask yourself, were emotions welcomed in your home? Or were they avoided? Were problems swept under the rug? Or were their emotions expressed in loud, angry behaviors? Were your parents affectionate with each other? Or were they disconnected? Did you see signs of affection? Could you go to your dad when you were afraid? Or was he emotionally absent? Did your mom know how to soothe her own anxiety? Or did she project it onto you? Again, this is not to blame your parents or say that they were bad, but it is something you have to look at from a lens of honesty. And then you be honest with yourself. When you were hurt, were you comforted or were you corrected? Were you allowed to be angry? Were you allowed to express your emotions? If you were angry, were you taught how to express it? Or were you told just to stuff it down? Or if you expressed frustration, was it met with punishment? If you spoke your mind, did you feel the wrath? When you wanted connection, did you get presence or did you get distraction? So when you start asking those questions and really looking at them through that lens, a lot of men realize, I love my parents and yeah, they loved me, but I don't remember them ever talking about emotions or dealing with emotions in a truly healthy way. And that's the point. You didn't see that, and you didn't know to ask that when you're that young. But when you look back through that lens, you see how you learned to perform and please and avoid and stay quiet and stay safe. Most likely you became the good kid, not stirring up trouble, not being a problem, the good kid. And you took pride in that. Sometimes your parents would say, yeah, he's a good kid. But that often meant leaving your real emotional needs behind. So noticing this is very important because our next step is choosing. We're going to choose to stop minimizing what we needed and didn't get. This is big because most men compare their childhood to someone else's trauma and say, well, it wasn't that bad. I had food, I had a bed, I had 2 loving parents, I had birthday parties, I had Christmas gifts, I did things, I'm fine. That's like saying, well, I didn't break my leg, so why does it hurt to walk? What most men are carrying is not dramatic trauma, it's emotional malnourishment. They learned that I have to earn love. If I'm emotional, I'm a burden. Don't ask for too much, it stresses people out. Just stay quiet, be good, be useful, everything will be fine. But that coping strategy, it kept you safe as a kid, it's now killing your marriage. If you really think about it, you're doing these things in your marriage that your parents probably did in theirs. One of you shut down when things get hard, or avoid vulnerability. Don't ask for what you really want. Chase affection instead of creating emotional safety. And you find yourself living in your head instead of in your body. And you think it's normal because it's familiar, but it's not working anymore. Again, it might have kept you safe as a child, but it leaves you disconnected as a husband. So now you choose something better. And as you choose to heal, you have to go back. This isn't about rehashing old stories. It's about understanding why you still act the way you do. So you have to go back to that little child inside of you, that inner boy, the one running the show when you get reactive or shut down or avoid intimacy. The one that panics when your wife pulls away and you try to fix. That little boy inside of you is saying, don't feel this, it's not safe, don't ask for more, you'll be too much, don't tell the truth, you might lose her or she'll be angry. And again, this is not to shame, it's not to blame, because your inner boy doesn't need shame. He's felt plenty of that his entire life. He needs you, the adult man, to say, little guy, I know why you did what you did. It worked then, but we don't need to do that anymore. Now you're no longer reacting from fear. You're responding from leadership. That's a turning point. That's choosing what your action is. And then you reach out. You reach out to your higher power, God, the universe, higher self, spirit, whatever that is for you. You have that dialogue with your divine guidance about your truth, that source of unconditional love, that source of inherent worth. And you go to that source for truth and for safety. And this helps you overcome those false core beliefs so that you don't have to repeat those same patterns anymore. And your adult man, your adult self, is conversing with your inner child and conversing with your higher power. And healing begins. And you can start to reverse those childhood survival strategies through your actions, those strategies that are now sabotaging adult connection. And you're able to break the cycle of the patterns that your parents started and their parents started. Because when you go back and you look through that lens we mentioned earlier, as a boy you learned how to not rock the boat, how to stay out of the way, don't be emotional, be helpful, just keep the peace. So do you see how those behaviors manifested into your adult self with people-pleasing and avoiding conflict and bottling up resentment, shutting down instead of asking for affection, reacting to her distance like it's a personal rejection? Instead of speaking your truth, you're hoping she'll read your mind? Do you see the connection there? And you're not bad, you're not crazy, your parents aren't bad, and they're not crazy. But you had the emotional gaps, and now you're running that childhood programming in an adult body. And the great thing is the moment you see it and understand where it comes from, you get to stop being controlled by it. And that's where we take that next step of taking action. We're going to take one secure step, even if it feels uncomfortable or unnatural. Because you're not going to change this overnight. You got to take this one step at a time. The good news is you can begin right now by choosing one moment where you stop reacting like the scared boy and respond like a secure man. So today, take one opportunity to, when your wife shuts down, instead of chasing her, just stay calm and say, babe, I'm here when you're ready. Or when you feel the urge to fix, pause and say to yourself, what do I need right now? Maybe if things get a little tense and you want to shut down, just breathe and say to yourself, I matter enough to stay present and not leave. Small steps every day. Each one sends a message to your nervous system and communicates to that inner boy inside, we are safe now. We don't have to disappear to stay connected. That's how the pattern breaks. That's how you break that generational pattern, because you may be teaching that to your children. But when you break the cycle, you do it by understanding the pattern and then living differently. You stop doing what you've been doing. You stop chasing approval. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop collapsing in conflict. You stop needing her affection to prove your worth. And instead, you do things different than your parents did. You lead yourself. Instead of repeating their same patterns, you become the man who creates peace from the inside. A man who can regulate his own nervous system and speaks his needs without guilt or shame. A man who doesn't need to be rescued. A man who loves the boy that he once was, but no longer lets him run the show. That's security. That's being a secure husband. Because when that man shows up in his marriage, everything shifts. No, it's not going to change immediately, but you can start immediately. You can stop abandoning yourself. And that will make profound changes in your marriage and in your life. Because your childhood looked good on the surface, but it doesn't mean your emotional needs were fully met. They may have loved you and you love them, but they may not have known how to model emotional connection. They did the best they could with what they were taught. But the wonderful thing is you don't have to repeat the patterns. You don't have to pass them on to your kids, and you don't have to perform for love, and you don't have to stay numb or reactive. You get to lead. And that's how you become the secure husband, working through the invisible patterns that started in childhood and shape your marriage today. I hope this podcast was helpful for you. If so, give me a review. Hit that subscribe button for more Secure Husband episodes. Share this episode with someone who you think may need to hear this. And visit securehusband.com for more resources. Hey, book one-on-one coaching with me. I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.